So, maybe you're new to the world of shooting or just new to the AR-15, but I'm sure at some point you've heard that proper cleaning and maintenance of your firearm is the best part of gun ownership, right? Yeah, neither did we. We'll talk to our scriptwriter on that one a little bit later. But you did come to the right spot, because today on the channel, we're going to be covering Tundra Tactical's ultimate guide to the proper cleaning and maintenance of your AR-15. So now that you spent your entire life savings and very potentially your child's college fund on your brand new rifle, then went out and bought a case of ammunition instead of listening to your wallet and just getting a couple of boxes, then subsequently shot it all, you have a pretty dirty gun. So let's go ahead and learn how to clean it. So before we take off like the Tasmanian devil of firearms maintenance, and start throwing gun parts all over the studio, ripping our firearm apart, potentially injuring ourselves and others, let's take a step back and answer some of the questions that we commonly see on other YouTube channels and get asked ourselves personally. So the question we get asked the most is, how often should I clean my rifle? And to be perfectly honest, that's a difficult question to answer, and it's deeply personal to most people, much like how's your sex life. It really depends, if I could borrow a term from another YouTuber, on the philosophy of use of your rifle. If you just spent $3,000 in a nice competition gun, you probably want to baby it a little bit. But if you just picked it up off the wall at the gun shop and it's a mil spec, well, you can probably put a few hundred rounds through it prior to having to clean it. Most of us with Tundra Tactical will go ahead and clean our rifles each time we go to the range. A lot of that has to do with the fact that when we do go shooting, we put about 200 to 300 rounds through our guns each time, and by the end of the day, our guns look a lot like a Las Vegas hooker at 2 a.m., really dirty. So the second question we get asked a lot is, what do I use to clean my gun? Well, this is the beautiful part about the firearms world. We're constantly innovating. And while it's a blessing, it can also be a curse. Now, a lot of the stuff that's out there in terms of firearms maintenance and cleaning is, well, for lack of a better word, crap. And the people who tell you otherwise are either salespeople for that product or they don't really know what they're talking about. The good news is there's a lot of really simple and easy to use products that don't require an advanced degree in mathematics or physics. And you can go as simple as a steel or brass brush and maybe a little hops number 9 in CLP. Really, you don't need much more than that. So make sure to think about that on your way out to grab the WD-40 and angle grinder and start shooting sparks in the internals of your gun. So the final question, how clean should I make my rifle prior to putting everything back together? It depends. Honestly, we can't be much more help than that. Is your gun a direct impingement gun? Is it a piston gun? What are the quirks? What type of rifle is it? What I would recommend doing is maybe doing some research online, finding the failure points, how many people have had, what round count they've had, things go wrong at, and go out and test it for yourself. Do 2 or 3 of these and then start cleaning a rifle around that round count. There is really no solid answer. So starting with the pieces to the back of the firearm, we have the charging handle. More than likely will not be red in your firearm, it'll be black. Has this little latch piece that we'll be dealing with a little bit later on. Next, on the opposite side of the gun, we have the bolt catch, or the bolt release, some people call it. I call it the ping pong paddle because that's what it reminds me of. The safety selector switch, the bolt itself, and the 2 receiver pins. 1 pin right here, 1 pin right here. Step number 1 is to obviously safety check your rifle, which we have done, but just for the sake of the internet trolls out there, we'll do again. You already can see there's no magazine in there and nothing's in the chamber. Once that's complied with, go ahead and pop the 2 receiver pins right here. You can go ahead and just pop them both out at the same time. Once that's done, separate the lower receiver from the upper receiver and set the lower receiver down to the side. Most of what we'll be dealing with today is just in the upper receiver, as this doesn't get really too dirty and might need a light coating of grease just from time to time. Next step is to take out the bolt carrier group, commonly referred to as the BCG. To do this, we'll be grabbing the latch on the charging handle here, pulling that latch and pulling the charging handle down. As you can see, the bolt carrier and the charging handle will both fall free of the upper receiver together. That's designed that way, so if it happens, don't freak out. Set your upper receiver down somewhere and prepare to clean both the thing that this is called. BCG. There we go, thank you camera guy, BCG, bingo, and the charging handle itself. So So now the rifle is field stripped and ready for a basic cleaning. But remember, this is the ultimate guide to cleaning and maintaining your AR-15, so we'll take it a step further, completely break down the bolt carrier group and its individual components.
So here we have the bolt carrier group, once again commonly referred to as the BCG. The first thing to do to disassemble the BCG is there's a cotter pin right here. It's very small, kind of hard to see sometimes. We're going to take a fingernail, or if you can't get your fingernail in there, like a little scribe or a toothpick works really well. We're going to go ahead and remove that cotter pin. The cotter pin's really easy to lose, so put this in a place that is going to be easy to find a little bit later when we go ahead and reassemble the gun. If we rotate the BCG vertically, you can kind of see it right there. The firing pin should just fall out. Now this is the actual firing pin. This is what makes your gun go bang, or part of what makes your gun go bang. But this is the part that actually contacts the primer. Once again, we're going to set that into a place that is a little bit, or that's easy to find later on. On the top of the bolt carrier group, right under this kind of tube piece, is this pin that freely rotates now. It didn't earlier when the firing pin and the when the firing pin and the cotter pin were in there, but now it does. We're going to rotate it so that it's in line with the front and back of the bolt carrier group, not vertical, if I can get it that way. So this is the way it shouldn't be. This is the way that it should be. And if we go ahead and turn the bolt carrier group upside down, pop it out, and there we go. There's our cam pin. Once that is done, the bolt carrier group is ready to be separated from the actual bolt itself. Here is your bolt, here is your bolt carrier group. Now your gun is pretty much ready for complete cleaning. We'll go ahead and set all these small pieces down, and we'll come back when we're actually cleaning the firearm. So if you just shot a lot of ammunition, you'll notice that there are kind of very specific parts of the bolt carrier group that are quite dirty. The bolt carrier group requires a pretty decent cleaning, but things like internally here and up here, you can skimp a little bit on, but you still want to maybe give it a little bit of love. So we'll start up here. We'll grab, if it's really caked on there, it's been a while, you might want to grab a brass brush and just kind of scrape it a little bit to loosen it up. A lot of the times this can actually get the bolt carrier group pretty darn clean. We'll rotate it around right here. We'll see it's pretty dirty again. Pretty much anything that has metal to metal contact or moving parts contacts the receiver. Just give a quick brush down while it's dry. And what we're going to be using to clean today is the Hops number 9. This is kind of a, you could almost call it an industry standard. Most people that clean guns will have at some point in time used the Hops number 9 solvent. It smells great, it smells like gun cleaning, and it just works really well. So we'll take an old dirty rag, open up our Hops number 9, and kind of generously apply some to a part of the rag. Put a lot on there. Might not want to use quite that much, but you'll go ahead and saturate the bolt carrier group in the Hops number 9 until it's nice and shiny, and you'll notice that a lot of that grime and crud will start just wiping right off, or at the very least just spreading around the bolt carrier group. Now personally, what I like to do is I like to get it nice and soaked and then just set it aside and let that solvent work its magic. From here we'll move right into cleaning off, From here, we'll move right into cleaning off the bolt itself. Same thing with the bolt. Take a brass brush, start breaking up some of that hard caked on carbon there, get it as clean as you can, and once you stop seeing any progress in getting it more clean, hit it with the Hops number 9 solvent. Now, like I said earlier when I was answering questions, there are a lot of different products out there that you can use. Personally, I prefer Hops number 9, but it's not the only product out there that's of good quality. There are things like Gun Scrubber, which is a little bit harsher. It's almost kind of like brake cleaner, but it does work really well for hard caked on carbon. It's a little harsher on the gun though, so you want to use that sparingly. So we'll go ahead and saturate this guy up pretty well. Do our best to kind of get in all the nooks and crannies. I'm sure this is kind of hard to see on camera. Apologize about that. You'll start to see it kind of coming off on your hands. That's how you know you're doing a good job if you're getting dirty. We'll let that sit for a bit. We'll come back to the bolt carrier group itself, take another steel brush, and start going to town on those same spots that we were brushing earlier, trying to get rid of that caked on carbon. You can use the small end of the brush to get into the harder to reach spots, or what I found works really well is like a Q-tip wrapped in like maybe a gun or like a bore cloth. Those tend to work pretty well as well. And just give it a light brush down, rub it off, and then wipe it back down. Try to get all that excess Hops number 9 off of there. And you should see it getting pretty clean from this point. The main thing here is, be detailed and diligent in the work, but you don't have to spend 3 hours just cleaning this one part. I probably already spent more than enough time on it. Forgot that front here. And from here, that's a pretty darn clean bolt carrier group. So we'll go ahead and set that down as finished. And now we'll come back to the bolt itself. Now this bolt is not very well taken care of, I might add, Alex. And it's pretty darn dirty, but we're gonna do our best. If you're kind of anal about your guns, you can take a metal scribe, and as long as you don't go too crazy on it, pretend like you're a dentist and start scraping off some of that super caked on carbon, or get into the hard to reach spots up under there. It's not really a necessity. I like to do it personally because I'm usually cleaning my guns when I'm watching a movie or something, and it, makes it take longer, makes me feel like I'm being more detailed in my work. Once again, we'll get in all the nooks and crannies, all the little crevices here, and careful with these because like I just did, it can kind of poke you and stab you. It doesn't hurt too bad, but it's not the most pleasant feeling in the world. Once we're done with those two pieces, we can go ahead and set them aside, and we'll go to work on the upper receiver next. So the next part we're going to be focusing on is the upper receiver itself. A lot of the times people will spend way too much time cleaning this. It can get pretty dirty, as you can see in there, but even a gun that's this dirty, it'll clean pretty easily. You'll take your saturated rag, the one that's already dirty, and just kind of start getting that Hops number 9 in there as best you can. Sometimes the trick I learned is to take the charging handle, wrap it around the gun, and that way you can kind of get into the places that are a little harder to reach with just a finger. And it's not going to get it super clean at this point, but it'll be a start. I like to start wiping off all that extra hops. It'll really start to get the gun clean. The other thing that you can do is kind of twist up your rag and start pulling it through like that. It does really help. Sometimes you'll see little bits of rag or particulate fall in there, and it's probably best to clean them out. Is it a necessity? Probably not, but even right now, that's a whole heck of a lot better than it was earlier. You can take a dry rag, and you can see it's still a little dirty, but it's not coming up super black. You kind of dry that off in there, and next it is time for cleaning out the bore. So one of the most important parts to focus on when cleaning the upper receiver is the star chamber or breech. Easy way to do it, one of the ways I like to do it, is with a Q-tip. It's for the people who are kind of anal about their guns, like to go in real detailed. But if you need to get down dirty nice and quick, you can use one of these brushes. It's essentially designed for this process. What you do is you stick it in the back, and get it in there till you get some resistance. Give a couple of turns, pull it out, stick it back in there, keep turning. If you don't have really sweaty hands, this is a lot easier. And then once you feel satisfied, you can go ahead and pull it out. And just like cleaning out the bore, take your soft pad, stick it on there, lube it up with some of that wonderful Hops number 9 that we love so much in the channel here. Doesn't really, oh, hail. That's a lot of Hops number 9. Don't have to use quite that much, but if it's not your gun and you're cleaning it for somebody else, much like we are today, who cares? Repeat that same process. Get it in there, jam it in there, literally, hello. Give it some twisteroos and bring it out. And you should see it nice and dark coming out like that. That's how you know you did a good job. Now what we prefer to use, and I know a lot of other people prefer to use, is something like a bore snake. This is a 223-556 bore snake, or 22 caliber. That's what you're looking for at Cabela's or on Amazon, wherever you decide to get it. We'll put a link in the description below to the bore snake on Amazon. If you guys pick it up, you'll be helping Tundra out a little bit. Go ahead and line the bore snake weighted piece up, feed it through the barrel. So I'll put the gun vertical, drop the weighted piece of the bore snake through, take off the suppressor. It usually helps. It's a good first step. Now this is a pistol length carbine here, or pistol length AR upper. So your AR upper is going to be a lot longer, but as you can see, the weighted piece should fall right through. You can go ahead and just yank it through. We'll do this a couple of times, and the bore and the barrel will get nice and clean. Normally I'm a lot more dexterous when I'm doing this. Go ahead and drop it through. If you want to do kind of like a back and forth movement. And 1 or 2 passes will make that barrel look nice and clean for you. And now your upper receiver is pretty much done and taken care of. You can go ahead and set that down. We'll move into cleaning off the charging handle next. As you can see, when your charging handle is colored, you can really see all the carbon buildup. It's difficult to see on a black charging handle, but on something that's colored or stainless steel, it's very easy to see. So at this point, we'll essentially just repeat the process. We'll find our dirty rag, get some hops number 9 on it again, and just start going to town and getting that sucker nice and saturated best we can. Maybe fold up a little piece of the cloth and wedge it in that little channel there and start rubbing. For my mature audience there, you won't be laughing. For the immature ones, you probably are at this point, including my camera guy. So once you've gone to town for a little while on that, you can take your brass or steel or nylon brush and give it a little bit of love. Help clean it off a little bit. Now, important thing to note is your gun is never going to be as clean as the day you brought it home and cradled it in your arms for the very first time. Maybe your wife got jealous or something like that, but it's never going to be quite that clean again. So you don't need to worry about getting every little tiny speck of carbon off of there. It's a lot like a cooking wok. Never heard that on a gun channel before. It's seasoned, it adds character. So once we're done getting some of that carbon off of there, getting a vast majority of that carbon off of there, we'll take our dry rag and go ahead and repeat the process of just wiping all that excess hops number 9 off. And you'll see that clean rag start to slowly shape into a dirty rag. And that's how you know you're doing a good job. One of the things to note when cleaning your charging handle or any other aluminum part on the gun is you gotta make sure not to use a steel or stainless steel brush. The reason being is this will damage the part. You wanna make sure to use either a brass or nylon brush. These will keep the metal safe and still get the gun or part nice and clean. And there is the finished product. You can kind of get up here a little bit too. It helps. There's a lot of carbon buildup that'll happen up here, especially on a pistol caliber or a pistol size upper, I think is the word I'm looking for there. That looks pretty good. So now that everything's been cleaned, we can go ahead and start lubricating all the parts. This is the easiest part and the part that people go a little bit too overboard on. The important thing to note is with lubrication, you don't need a lot. A little goes a very, very long way. Today for lubrication, we'll be using CLP. It's probably the most commonly used lubrication out there. It's what a lot of the military police forces use. That's where I get my experience with it. I like it, I think it works well, but Miltech 1 works really well. Rem oil, even in a pinch, it's not terrible, it's not the greatest stuff in the world, but it does work. And it's usually pretty readily available either online or at your local stores, either big or small. So we'll go ahead and take our bolt carrier group. And how I like to do this, get down and dirty with it, I'll put a little just on the tips of my fingers. That way I know I'm not doing too much, and I'll just kind of give it a rub down. Love on it a little bit. Like we were explaining earlier, this is a very personal process, and you want to make sure to enjoy it as best you can. So once that's kind of done, take the rag, wipe that extra crazy grease off of there, and just so long as there is enough grease to kind of leave just a fingerprint, you know you've done a good job. We'll repeat that same process with our bolt, which is now missing. Camera guy, what'd you do with the bolt? Harshing my mellow, man. Okay, the bolt has gone into the 4th dimension at this point. Ah, camera guy, it comes through again. Perfect. All right, so I'll put a little bit of CLP on my fingers. This stuff comes out like a fucking rocket ship, so you want to be careful so it doesn't fly all over the place or in your eye or anything like that. Just get it all nice and lubed up. Wipe the excess grease off. Set it down to the side. We'll go ahead and give some grease to the upper receiver. This you go really light on, and I'll put a little bit of CLP just on the end of my. Whoa, hey-o. Make sure you're pointing it in the right direction. This thing has a mind of its own. I'm telling you that right now. So for me, I'll just start pulling the rag with the CLP on it through the gun and back out. And that way it gets a nice even coating on the inside. You can use that trick I showed earlier with the charging handle, just kind of give it a little bit more pressure if you want to run the rag through a little bit more. Once you're satisfied and can see that the CLP has gotten in there, take a dry part of the rag, wipe all the excess crap off of there. Final step of lubrication is a little bit of juice on this guy right here. That's a lot of juice. Wipe some of that off. I was taught anything with metal to metal contact, I think it works. Maybe in my head, but it always feels like the charging handle runs a little smoother with some grease on there. Once again, some grease, not an excessively large amount. From here, we're ready to start reassembling the rifle. So the good news about AR-15s and a lot of other firearms is you pretty much just reverse your process when you disassembled the gun to reassemble it. So we'll start off by taking our, I forgot how to do this. We'll start off by taking our bolt, and you'll notice that the bolt carrier, or excuse me, the bolt has holes on either side. The cam pin, fumble, slippery son of a gun. The cam pin will only fit in one side. It won't fit in either side. So how you tell this is looking from the front. When you slide the bolt back into the bolt carrier group, you align the extractor, this little pin piece right here. You align the, excuse me, not the pin piece. Let's do this right. You'll notice on kind of the stars here, or on the little ridges, that one is different from the other. You'll line that up facing to the right, and in the top, we'll give you a close-up shot of this. In the top, there's a hole. That's the right size hole to put the cam pin into. The cam pin will slide in there, and you'll rotate it 90 degrees to where it is now vertical. Step number whatever we're on, take the firing pin, drop the firing pin in there, and step number 3-ish is put the cotter pin back in the bolt carrier group. Now sometimes this is a pain in the butt. This one actually went in there a little, or quite easy, but on a newer gun that cotter pin takes a little bit of work. So once you got that all ready to go, you can kind of give that some running, and if it moves freely, you're good. You can go ahead and set that down to the side, grab your upper receiver, and once your upper receiver is in your hand, take your charging handle, slide it into the gun, and once again, it can go all the way in there, but be flippity-floppity. If you pull it out while pressing down, it'll hit that little recess, or that the spot where it slides into its pathway, and that way it slides in nice and clean, and then won't accidentally fall out of your gun. With bolt carrier in hand, you'll take the gas key and align it with the recess here in the charging handle. Make sure that the bolt is pushed all the way out. If you feel really crazy, you can just kind of whip it out like that. Be careful, it's probably slippery. Line those two pieces up, push them together, and bingo, we're ready to rock and roll. Flip this guy upside down, or right side up, I guess, depending on your orientation. Align the front hinge pin. Push that sucker closed. Come on. Now with our gun, we have a bolt carrier and a aftermarket bolt carrier and aftermarket buffer. You won't have to press this down if you have a mil-spec buffer. However, if you don't, or the retaining pin for the buffer is no longer in your gun because it shot off like a rocket ship into space for the 4th dimension, you go ahead and press the buffer tube back, close up the rifle, and press your final receiver pin home. Once those two are in place, the receiver is pretty much assembled, or the upper and lower receiver is assembled. You go ahead and rack the charging handle, switch the fire selector switch to fire, and dry fire the gun. If you hear a click, you did it right. If something doesn't, or if the click doesn't happen, then you did something wrong. The final function test, while pressing the trigger down, rack the charging handle and slowly release the trigger, and you should hear a click. Beautiful. So that is how you disassemble, reassemble, and clean your AR-15. Thanks for watching. So if you guys liked the video, you know what to do. Give us the old thumbs up and share it around with your friends. If you didn't like the video, give us a thumbs down. And just maybe leave some comments as to how we can make our videos not suck in the future, please. If you're interested in purchasing any of the products we're featuring in our videos, and you feel like helping out Tundra Tactical, consider clicking on some of the Amazon links in the description below. Each time you do so, we receive a small commission based on what you purchase, and you'd be supporting Tundra Tactical. Also, consider subscribing to the channel to stay up to date on our current and future content, and visit www.tundratactical.com for more entertainment.